2024. And could we have roll call, please?
Dave Pittman.
Here.
I have Kent Fowler as absent.
Okay.
Chrissy Riggs as absent.
Okay.
Tracy Johnstone.
Here.
Sunny Brandt.
Here. All
Thank
right.
you.
Advisory members?
Okay. Eric C.
Yeah.
Thank you. As the alternate. Jonathan Young.
Here.
Steve Rothert. Or Dave Steindorf. No. Okay. Mark Grover and Claudia is not here. But we do have Amber. And then we do have, or do we have Aaron, right?
We do. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
He's hiding.
All right, next item would be Pledge of Allegiance. Sunny, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
And salute, pledge. I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next item, hearing of individuals' non-agenda items. Do we have any non-agenda item cards, or?
We do not, sir.
All right. Steering Committee advisory members and staff reports. Looks like DWR's up first.
Okay. Yeah, there's, lake elevation is 863 today. Low flow. Okay. Low flow channels at, flowing at 1500 CFS, high flow channel at 8000 CFS, about 3700 CFS of inflow. Looking at, forecast at about 740 elevation for the lake to end up at in late fall. News of late, I guess there are some upcoming meetings of interest. The Oroville Dam Citizens Advisory Commission meeting is going to be virtual this August 2nd, Friday, August 2nd at 10 a.m. You can find that
On the website.
on the website for the, at the Resources Agency. And then the next Oroville Recreation Advisory Committee meeting is on the Friday, November 1st, 10 a.m. at the Southside Community Center. With that, we were
Thank you,
taken
sir.
away.
Any questions for the folks? Any questions?
Well,
Nope.
my only question is what the power loss, the amount of money we lost from the supplemental benefit fund, had we been able to record the power loss from the inception of the dam, the settlement agreement until now, the money that would have been lost to the supplemental benefit fund. And I know that's a complicated thing. I don't think the state or the water contractors are probably interested in seeing that figure and making it known to the people that administer the fund, and I'm just disappointed, that's all.
Okay. All right, Jonathan, State Water Contractors.
I have no update from our end, but I just want to thank all the first responders, the CAL FIRE, Parks and Rec, for their response during the latest fire up here. I know I've got a chance to meet a lot of you and members of the community and been up here quite frequently, so I just want to commend them for the amazing work they did in another challenging year.
Yeah.
Way too frequently. All right, State Parks, Aaron.
Hey, everybody. So parks have been busy with the summertime. Heat has had a huge impact, lowering some of the visitation. And then also the fire had a huge impact as well, especially during the 4th of July weekend. The only thing remaining closed from the Thompson fire currently is portions of the Brad Freeman and Dan Beebe trails. There's about 25 miles still closed. All the park units, however, are open. We're finally able to get Burma back open again. So there is access to the water and diversion pool. And visitation's there, and it's already been a super popular place to go. So outside of that, the parks are reopened again. No big issues there. Staffing is still, our seasonals actually did a better job than we expected. We're decent staff for the seasonals. We have no lifeguards still, and our permanent staff is still super short-staffed, which is a huge impact to us. And then I know of interest of everybody, the houseboat that's in the North Fork. There's progress being made, and we should hopefully, if everything goes well, have it out of the park by the end of next week. So as the water's going down, they've already been making plans to get it out. We've been working with the owner. So those have been kind of the biggest impacts or biggest things currently. So any questions from the dais or the community?
Just in case somebody might not, the houseboat is failing or sinking, or what's the status of that one?
So that's the houseboat that went up to the North Fork to see the falls, and they got it stuck.
Oh,
And then as the water was receding, they didn't tell anybody soon enough, and then it was completely stuck, and then it actually started breaking down.
oh, wow.
And so DWR helped with putting a log boom out there to maintain the parts that fell off the houseboat as it was deteriorating. We've had a little bit of vandalism out there, but essentially we couldn't get it out, and then the damage to it became worse and worse, to where it was, the highest estimate I saw was about 1.5 million to get it removed, and the cheapest I've seen is about 600,000. So it's not going to be an easy. It's one of the larger houseboats, and so getting it off the lake would be very significant. But on a different pace or a different note, I know Mayor Pittman, you'd be interested. Clay Pit, the annex was completed, and so we are moving forward. I know staff reached out to the city to start working on how to go take the next steps of getting utilities hooked up to the park and going forward with developing the clay pit.
Yeah, that's really good news. I heard staff had a meeting and working on that issue about starting to get the developments into the clay pit. Has there been something different with your organization with that, or any lead? Just focus on it now, or is there a possibility the funds released to make the improvements?
Well, I mean, the biggest step was getting through LAFCO and the process to get it annexed. That took a lot of time.
Okay.
We're not sure why, because everybody was supportive of it,
Yeah.
but it just wouldn't get processed through.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure because I wasn't in the nuts and bolts
Right.
of getting that.
Gotcha.
But that was the biggest hurdle, and that's really taken us a few years to get
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah.
But it has finally been approved, and so now we're looking at pulling out the original plans of what we were going to do.
Yeah.
There is some impacts just looking at environmental impacts.
Right.
All the off-highway vehicle areas are currently kind of being looked at. And so one of the things we want to make sure is that we're not doing a build-out that's going to not be open to the public or waste any kind of state fund. And so that's one of the things we are concerned with.
Yeah.
I'm sure the wildlife impact reports. And so that was one thing that was kind of being looked at.
Yeah.
I know locally we are advocating, and this probably isn't for public, but I'll say it anyway. We're advocating that the OHV use is actually beneficial to the fairy shrimp, the protected species out there. We're
is.
noticing that we see more fairy shrimp in those areas utilized. And so that's one of our things that we're trying to push back and say, hey, look, this is actually a benefit
Right.
to these endangered species. And so that process is going kind of simultaneously in place.
Yeah. Well, that would fall back to the site visit the OHV commission made on the tour, and that was the report, verbal report to give everyone on that tour that the fairy shrimp were at 100 plus protection or reproduction rate,
Yeah.
which they, and the theory being that the grasses would mash down in the ruts and actually make a better breeding environment. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting, but that's good to hear. That's nice. I had a chance to go to Prairie City's Hangtown event with the motocross, and boy, that's a huge event. It brings millions into that little area there.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I didn't know it was that big a deal. So,
Oh, it's huge, and it's gotten bigger every year. And I was a part of it back in 2003,
yeah.
and I've just watched it grow over the years. So,
Well, they had a memorial for Chris McAvoy, which used to live here, and that's now going to be in the annual golf tournament. And they actually raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for that golf tournament. So, Orville Boy makes good, passes away, and then we have the now memorial there at Prairie City. So it'd be great to have that memorial here one day.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you for the report. Any questions? All right. American River Steindorf's not here. City Administrator, Mr. Ring.
Just a quick update. I do try to reach out to FERC on a regular basis with regards to the licensing. I hadn't heard back from them since March, so I did email them this week. And again, what they were looking at back in March was the endangered species. There was a report they were still working on having to do with the impacted species that were identified. So have not heard back, but as soon as they usually get back to me within a week, I will push that information out to this group as soon as I hear back.
Thank you.
Okay. It's good to hear. Mr. Marciniak, anything special?
Okay, just two things. We have two open projects, the 100,000 grant for the lighting of the Oroville Green Bridge. Dean Gurr had sent me an email. He had been out of town. He's going to provide a written report as to where they are with the process through the county, which seems to be maybe the thing that is holding it up at the moment. And then secondly, I've reached out a couple times now to Brian Wilson. Assume you're Brian Wilson. There you are. Hi, Brian. I'm Bob. Okay. And still trying to get this Brad Freeman missing link finished. If not, then, at our next semi-annual meeting, we'll have it as an agenda item to discuss further. Okay?
Okay.
Anything you'd like to add? Step up and
Yeah.
push the little button to get the red light to go off.
Welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Brian Wilson, Federal Park District. I did receive your emails. I tried to give you a call yesterday. Didn't quite catch you. Backstory is effective general manager July 1. I have been reviewing the notes from former manager Chris Wagner and I believe former executive administrator and interim general manager Victoria Teague. Seems that's when the most activity had been going on. What I saw most recently was the potential for a cooperative grant application for some used tire, shredded tire material. Those were the last notes that I saw. Would have been November, December. Those notes suggested that the city and the district would be collaborating on going out for that grant. I don't know if that grant ever got submitted. So we're looking into that and the third-party natural resources agency that was working with the district on that. What I do know is that in looking at the notes, and all of you likely already know this, originally it seemed when the application was submitted by the district, there were three agencies involved, the state, the city, and the district. The state is no longer part of this project. Verbally, the city has walked backwards on their ability to commit. And if we're looking at the district's ability to pull the remainder of this project off independently, at first glance, I don't know how that happens. And so very understandable that funds have been awarded for this project. Monies have been spent for drawings, engineer reports, et cetera.
And the environmental,
And
that's big.
I believe the last communication that I received was at least recommendation on behalf of the SBF was that no additional funds to be spent unless for construction purposes. Today, the district is not prepared to move forward on construction.
Okay.
We don't have that ability to do so. In no way is the district suggesting that we don't value the completion of the project, nor stating that we don't want to be part of the project. We are not in an ability to complete the project independently today.
Sorry.
Okay, well, we appreciate the report. I do, Brian, recall a number when Victoria was here talking, there was a shortage of around 150, 60,000, some number like that. I don't know if in your notes you may find that. The next discussion, maybe we could talk about that, as some number to complete, because she was very close to putting it all together. Yeah,
And I am working on piecing together the notes.
Right.
From many different individuals.
yeah,
And yes, it has been done.
okay. Good, it's good to hear.
That's where we're at.
Okay,
Appreciate the report, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
This would complete a hard-faced path that you could take a stroller on or a
Right.
bicycle on without going on gravel
Or a
to the
wheelchair.
diversion pool.
Right.
Wow,
Yeah,
what a concept.
yeah,
And we're stuck on this little piece.
yeah.
And it's just, there's got to be funds somewhere to get this done. We
Okay.
got to work harder at coming up with them.
Good idea. Thank you, Brian. Consent calendars, up next. Approval of the minutes. And the semi-annual fund. Any questions on the consent calendar for folks?
I move we accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Sunny Brandt,
Yes.
Dave Pittman,
Yes.
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Presentations. PowerPoint regarding the SBF Fund Strategic Plan will be presented by Bob Marciniak.
Okay. So we'll pull that up. Okay, so actually not real long, but I think some general information that is helpful both to the community and to any of the newly appointed members to the SPF Steering Committee. So the SPF Regional Fund Strategic Plan was a requirement of Appendix B of the settlement agreement. It's a 365-page document. It was approved by the steering committee in 2010. It has a provision to look at it about at least every 5 years or so. In 2018, it was reviewed and updated to include the Feather River Conceptual Plan as part of it. And I have been working on it for the last several months to make some updates. Later in the meeting today, we do have an agenda item for you to consider approving the updates that I'm recommending. Okay. So why was the Regional Fund Strategic Plan done? As I mentioned, it was a requirement of Appendix B of the settlement agreement. Initially, $350,000 was allocated to, which included hiring a consultant firm. I happened to have come on board right about the time that we were reaching out for a consultant firm, and spent the better part of my first year working with that firm, and we were able to get the plan done for $173,050, which allowed the balance, $176,950, to go back into the SPF fund for projects. So what is the intention of the Regional Fund Strategic Plan? It provides the steering committee a framework for making decisions regarding allocation and appropriation of SPF revenues. It recognizes that the funds are limited, recognizes that there's going to be healthy competition for the funds, provides a rational and objective method for allocating and appropriating the funding. It has flexibility for modifications, and it provides a long-term vision that emphasizes and benefits the Oroville region. I think the most important part of it is that it's a transparent document. It's available on the City of Oroville website. It's also available through other agency websites. The public can look at it, elected can look at it, or somebody that's wanting to run for an office can look at it. So there are key components of the Regional Fund Strategic Plan. And the first part is an executive summary. The steering committee worked on a mission statement for multiple months. They had a couple of special committees. The mission statement, the short end of it is investing in recreational and related projects with a nexus to the Feather River to improve the quality of life and stimulate economic development in the Oroville region. And so it talks, the Regional Fund Strategic Plan allows for the establishment of a steering committee of voting members, which are elected officials, 3 from the City of Oroville and 2 from the Feather River Recreation Park District. And then we have a series of advisory members that we look to for advice and for assistance when we're trying to get projects done.
Question, Bob.
Yeah, sure.
If you wanted to change some of the criteria for awarding grants, you could go back in and look at that section and change
Yes.
it?
Sonny, okay, so what occurs is when grant money is available, we put together, meaning put together a NOFA, Notice of Funds Available. Prior to doing the NOFA, I have a public meeting with the elected, and we go through what the criteria lists for the money that they want to put out. The last NOFA that was issued was very specific about one of the 5 reaches of the Feather River staying within the nexus. So to answer your question, it can be changed. It requires a vote of the steering committee to change the parameters of it.
So it could be changed prior to awarding the next grant?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, prior to the NOFA being made public, we have a public meeting to talk about the contents of the NOFA and the ability to make any adjustments or changes. Okay?
Super.
So there's actually 5 unique chapters to the Regional Fund Strategic Plan. The first one is an introduction and overview. It has background and it talks about the strategic plan. The second chapter is the strategic goals, objectives, and principles. It talks about the mission of the Supplemental Benefit Fund. It goes through goals and objectives, and the steering committee, several years ago had a couple of off-site all-day meetings to come up with goals and objectives. And then it talks about the guiding principles, which is to put funds back into the community for the benefit of the greater Oroville region. The next chapter is the strategic environment. It is consistent with Appendix B of the settlement agreement. It offers opportunities and constraints. It kind of helps people reading it understand that, you want to do everything, but you can't. It's not an open, bottomless pit of money, even though we wish it would be. It has institutional capacity and requirements, talks about funding forecasts, and the potential availability of the annual SBF funding. The, fourth chapter is the operational plan. It's the budget framework. It talks about the various categories. It also talks about the selection process. And Sonny, that's the one that during a NOFA establishment, we would spend 1 or more meetings talking about. The fifth one is administration and the implementation plan. The governance, we do have regular public meetings. We are very transparent with what we do. We publish our minutes. We have available the recordings. And with the current technology, we actually have a video of each of the meetings available. It covers the administrative functions and talks about how to implement the various actions. The plan also has appendices, which has forms. The forms include how to fill out a NOFA, and that has been updated and changed multiple times. We have a copy of the settlement agreement for anyone wanting to plow through that. We list the prior projects, an identification list of things that kind of the wish list, the rules of governance, who signed all of this, and then we have a mock technical scoring exercise and an opportunities analysis. I won't go down all the tables, but there are various tables that actually provide a flow chart, making it easier for the reader to look at. So instead of having to read 50 pages of dialogue, you can look at a flow chart and follow A, B, C, D, etc., and hopefully come to a conclusion at the end and fill out your application and get an award. We talk about, in the next one, a list of figures, We show what the FERC boundaries are. We show what the Feather River Low flow channel is, what the annual budget process is, and then we talk about a couple of different scenarios in the Regional Fund Strategic Plan. If it was a 50-year license and we received $1 million a year, how we could spend that money. We also talk about, at the same time, the ability to potentially bond money. So should we get a 50-year plan or a 35-year plan, and we know we're getting 50 million or 35 million, whatever it is, the steering committee could and might be receptive to issuing a bond and taking that 50 million and turning it into, let's say, $30 million hard cash in our hands, okay, and be able to do something big versus a whole bunch of little tiny chipping away things, okay? Excuse me. I've had laryngitis for a week, so bear with my voice. Well, normally you bear with it anyway, but thank you. It has quarterly functions, and we just recently have gone to a semi-annual SBF meetings pending hopeful funds from our funding source is. And so it talks about each of the quarters. The first quarter, what would occur, and the SBF program specialist, which is a position that I'm filling in, and then what the steering committee would do. And so there are some very specific things for each quarter, and they can be changed depending on what the needs are. So, example, if in quarter 1 of 2025 we are successful in acquiring funding, we would not spend a whole lot of time talking about concepts and budgets, but we would probably delve right into what are we going to do with the funds, a NOFA, out to the public. Or we would ask the public, which we did 2 years ago, we put out a request for projects, and we had about 20 items come in, and at that time the funds were awarded to the Park District, additional money for the Brad Freeman Trail project, okay? So each one of these quarters is significant and kind of has its own little life. And at the end of the day, the SBF is the results of a working partnership with the Department of Water Resources, state water contractors, the City of Oroville, Feather River Recreation and Park District, the Oroville Area Chamber of Commerce, American Rivers, and California State Parks. So we all have a vested interest in it, and the importance of the Regional Fund Strategic Plan, I believe when this was all put together for the settlement agreement over pushing 18 years now, somebody at least had the foresight to say you need to have a plan to operate. Okay? And with that, I open that for any questions that you might have. And
No,
if
I
not,
think it's a great
conclude.
reminder. Any questions from the board?
Okay. This is one of the items that I've been doing at some of our meetings to try to help educate what the process is.
Yeah.
Thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah, thank you, Bob.
Informative, thank you.
It's good to have on the site, too. If anyone else walks in the door, they don't know, this is a different language.
Yeah, it's there's a lot more to it than
Yeah.
meets the eye.
Well, thank you. Any questions any cards from the audience at all?
No, sir.
All right. Okay, look at item number 5. Discuss the potential letter to DWR.
Actually, number 4, please.
Number 4? Oh, number 4, 5-year regional fund strategic plan. You're right.
Thank you. So on page 29, if you have your packet or if you're following electronically, there is a staff report about the 5-year review of the regional strategic plan. And as I mentioned in my PowerPoint overview, there is a provision to look at it every 5 years, go through it, correct language if there's a grammatical error, typo. It's an opportunity to make that correction and to add additional information if need be. So what I'd like to do is, if you'd go to page 31, I detailed the multiple changes that I was recommending. And Brian and I had actually talked about this. One of the ways we could have done this would have been to put the 365 pages up on the screen and gone through each page. And having done that once before, once learned, once tried and twice learned, is that how that goes? We would recommend not to do that. Secondly, a committee could be established to go through it and do basically the same thing. This time around, several months ago, the steering committee authorized me to go through and look at it, which I did, and have met with Brian, the fund administrator, on the recommended changes. So on page 31, I'll kind of do maybe a highlight of each of these. What I did was I listed the page where something would change. And so like on page 1, there was not a clear explanation about why you're doing a 5-year review. So I put what I considered a clear explanation. Page 4 is just basically changing a date that it had been reviewed. Page 4, the same thing, that it had been reviewed in 2017. Page 8, when we reviewed it the last time, we put in all of the information about the Feather River conceptual plan, but what was left out was a title on the page, so I've added the title. Page 9 talks about where the complete information is and how people can find it. They can go to the City of Oroville website, Supplemental Benefits Fund drop-down menu, and there's about 20 different further drop-downs that give you a lot of information. Page 10, we talk about the 2024 update, that the FERC license remains unapproved or unsigned, and what's occurring. It talks a little bit about the initial funds that we received, how a large portion of it, $5,200,000, went to build beautiful Riverbend Park, and the balance of the funds, how they were dispersed. On page 11, this talks about wanting to be in sync with both the mission statement and the fact that the steering committee identified a mission statement. Page 13 details the $2,518,000 in projects that have occurred and been approved since the update in 2017. Page 14 added a footnote which indicates who the voting members are, because in the Regional Fund Strategic Plan, it just says there will be voting members. So I added a footnote. On page 15, I added the funding chart, which kind of gave a graphic explanation of where the $11,270,000 went. Page 16, I added information about public-private partnerships and how we can use them to hopefully benefit us. 17, we kind of I tried to dive deeper into a financing arrangement with the state water contractors who ultimately would be a partner in providing a grant, either a grant writer or funding for the grant writer. And then on page 35, talked about the $3 million of that $11 million that got released ahead of the schedule. Page 40 is a illustrative example of multiple year budgets. 41, I added a footnote about how the SBF is facilitated. It's different than it was when the Regional Fund Strategic Plan was written. Page 66, we added a beautiful playground for children at the Riverbend Park, and the SBF funded that. And page 95, I added a title to the page. There was an application, but it had no title. So basically, that's kind of a high level of the changes that I would recommend that we make for the 2024 review. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. If not, I would ask the chair to ask for a motion to approve the changes.
Appreciate that. Do we have any questions from the board at all? Any from the committee advisory members? It's a long document.
Hey, Bob, I had a question. I've seen it
be.
somewhere, I feel like. Is there a map, like a geographic map of
Only,
where all these
yeah.
projects that have been funded? Is that located somewhere?
I'm sorry, say again.
Is there somewhere either on the website or in the plan of a map that kind of puts a pin on where all these projects that have received funding are?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually on the website.
Okay.
If you go to the page, I believe it's actually called SBF Projects, and it lists it by year, what was funded both in large marketing and small projects.
Okay. Thank you.
That might be a nice appendix to add to the regional fund plan, to add the actual pictures of where these projects are located as an appendix.
Oh,
Just to add it,
okay.
Yeah.
All right,
That'd be
that's a
nice
great
to have it
idea.
That way it's kind of packaged in the same place, because
Okay.
we all know websites. We all-
I'm good at adding pictures, so
Yeah, exactly.
I will do that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pictures sell projects. Very true.
So I move to approve the recommended changes.
That's what it reads, but it's not.
Okay.
Second that,
Moved and seconded. Call roll, please.
Sunny Brandt,
yes.
Dave Pittman,
Yes.
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Now we're to item number 5, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead. Potential letter to DWR. Who's going to read it, Brian or?
Yeah, I'll do this one.
All
So
right.
the board asked, I think, staff to kind of draft a letter. We've had a lot of conversations during the SBF meetings about the fact that obviously without the new license, that the funding has dried up. So Bob and I met a couple times on this, and we tried to craft a letter that obviously showed the appreciation of the funds that have been received and front-loaded, and explained how they've been spent, but also expressed that when when the settlement agreement was developed, there was an impression or a belief that the FERC license would be issued within a couple of years. And here we are many, many years after the fact. So the idea here is to try to have some additional funding front-loaded, and a request for that. And obviously, we know that those monies would come off the top of anything once a license is actually hopefully issued. But it would give this governing body and the community an opportunity to continue and reinvest in the community as it was designed or intended to do so. So that's the purpose of this. We don't know, obviously, if how well it will, what the response will be, but we figured it can't hurt to make the request.
I think it follows Sonny's comment some time ago asking for money.
Yes. Jonathan, question to you. The original settlement, and in the advertising, it says we're given $1 million a year for recreation in the Orville area outside the project. Was that factored into the development of the project and the funding of the project and the way it would operate?
I honestly don't know the answer to that question, so it's something I'd be happy to follow
certainly,
up with.
they felt they had enough water, enough power to get the water to the south cheap, and they'd make enough money that they could pay $1 million a year for us to use to develop recreation for the loss of the major recreation area in our area for the entire summer. When it's 110 or whatever, you just drive down there and jump off the pier in the river. Whoa! But they took it. And they gave us $1 million a year, and that was really good. One of my problems is I got out of the process. I went through all the negotiation meetings. That's what they said. You get $1 million a year. And at that time, they said for 50 years or for 30 years. It was $1 million. Didn't make any difference. They said it will be a 50-year license or a 30-year license. That's what they told us. Now there's all kinds of other things that happen. And I unfortunately got out of the mixed for about 10 years in operating Oro West Rec and Health Club, and I wasn't involved with the Recreation District anymore, and so I wasn't attending meetings. And somehow a board got established, and an Appendix B came out of the woods, and I had signed the agreement when they said you get $1 million a year. I signed that. Now, because of B, we don't necessarily get $1 million a year, so things change. But electricity costs have gone up tremendously. The money from electricity. Water gets more and more expensive. So the economics that they base this $1 million a year on still applies. This isn't going to be part of the license. This is just an agreement between us. And you've got the money for $1 million a year. And why we don't ask for $1 million a year, because I agree with this letter, except the first sentence, or the second paragraph on the second page, which says any advance funding would be deducted from the first or subsequent SBF disbursements once FERC license is approved and implemented. I would change that to say, well, the paragraph above, change the 5 million to 1 million. That's the amount that the project should produce and make available to the community, $1 million a year until the FERC license is approved. And then I would say that any advance funding would not be deducted from the subsequent payments to the SBF once the license was issued. Why would we take it out? Why would we take it out? Now, we're the ones requesting. We're making a request for something. And it's like we're requesting halfway of what we really deserve, what we should be getting, what's fair. And I can't see what's wrong with asking for what's fair, and they may come back with something less. You ask for half what's fair, they may come back with less than that, and you may feel good. But I say, go for $1 million a year, and don't let them take it out of the license. This isn't part of the license. It's part of their operation. And they've been able to provide money. And I don't know of anything that's really going to reduce their ability to pay. So I would definitely make those two changes. And then I'd be wholeheartedly in favor of the letter.
I think one of the things that we had recently, and I mean, I'm not arguing with it at all, but DWR put on a little training session for a number of us as city council members. And I think it was very good. Not all of us could attend. I got a chance to attend, but to have the clarity of A and B and understanding that. And Ralph Torres was there, which I hadn't seen him in years. Whoa. And he brought some his story to the discussion. I'm suggesting that might not be a bad idea to repeat for maybe this body too, to meet with that same group and get, kind of overview of the whole licensing process. I don't know what we called that. That was your team and what was that process called? We had it up at DWR and it was a meeting. Pardon?
A couple months ago?
Yeah.
It was just I think it was just a courtesy.
Your chair.
I wasn't a part of that, but
Okay.
my understanding was it was just a courtesy, kind of educational, historical
Right.
background provided
Yeah.
to members of the city council.
Right. I think that's a really good thing. It might nicely be repeated to some other elected officials too, because it brought up, I know Brian obviously learned a lot, and I think Fred was there, and offered again maybe for some of the council members that couldn't attend it, because I think it brought a good history background to it. Not to say, it also kind of reinforces Sonny's argument, because that's the way it was then, and people need to understand the difference between B and A. You know, B is outside the project. A, I think was the most thing is, once it's an A and it's in the FERC license, doesn't matter what the costs are. They just have to build it. So that was the one thing, because we were asking about, remember, you know, how cost increases have come up, but in A, you just have to build it. You don't get to put out the cost differentials, because if the FERC says you build it, and it's not, doesn't come away from, you know, the other parts of the agreement. So B is basically the supplemental benefit agreement that we have here, which is,
So Dave, that was on setting up this board. We had a prior board,
yes, okay.
and then they set this board up.
Right.
And that's what brought B in.
That's what brought
And
B
and
in.
B came in after the license. So we signed the license with the agreement
They
they
signed
told.
the agreement, the license hasn't been signed.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
They proposed the license. In our settlement, they said, this is what you get.
Right. for B.
Million a year for
Right.
50 or 30 years. That's what they said.
Right.
And then they came back after I had signed it, and they come out with this thing that says, no, not necessarily, you don't get a million. But they advertise it as a million.
Well, I know.
Looks good to them.
Yeah, but I think if we had that meeting and we clarify the differences between the two, A and B exhibits might be helpful.
Okay, I can make that request.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Appendix A and Appendix B were a part of what you signed.
Right.
What I signed?
Yes,
Yeah.
there was no time lapse in there. There was a lot of fine print, apparently, that didn't get read, but that's not,
Right.
I wasn't the one reading it. And you were.
Right.
But B are those items that are, would happen without
Discussion.
FERC approval of
Right.
Yeah.
the license, or weren't contingent on FERC approving.
Yeah. So the
approval.
big question
However,
is for this letter.
It was still,
Yeah.
the trigger was
Right.
upon issuance of the license.
And the idea of the letter, we were trying to stay within the scope of the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement says 1 million will be issued once the
License
license
issuance.
is signed. So that's why it's written the way it is. And it's a good point about the money. We deliberated over, you know, how much should we ask for, and we felt like if we asked for the million, we didn't think there'd be high likelihood of acceptance for that. So we chose 500,000 and. And the reason why it's worded in a way that it would be deducted from the first and subsequent payment, because that would be consistent with what the settlement agreement is. Because
Right.
I know that we can't go back and renegotiate that. So that's why it's articulated the way that it is.
Yeah, the asking for it not to be accounted to the settlement agreement, that's starting a whole nother new agreement.
Yeah,
And I understand your point,
I
but
do too.
it would be a
Yeah.
different agreement that we'd
Yeah.
have to. So we already have a fixed amount of money, the $50 million that this settlement agreement signed. And we're still working down from that. And I think the other part of this letter is, we've gotten a couple, you know, some $100,000, we got some advance payments already on this, that we did some good work, clearly. And it's just kind of at a point where we're at the hands of FERC, and in that meeting that we went to, we got a good indication of how the relationship with FERC is going on, and that, which would be a good thing to have for everybody to sit and talk to people that are actually on your agency talking to FERC on a regular basis, because you get the whole big picture of what FERC's all about, because they really have held us back. So I think that's the reason for the request, is we're being held back, and it's like everybody's wanting to see things done, and that's the struggle. So what shall we do, folks? Welcome. Didn't see
Sorry,
that.
Mike.
It's all right.
For some reason, I was thinking 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
My bad.
Tracy, any comments?
No,
What number do you like?
I make a motion that we move forward with the letter.
Okay. As written?
As written.
As written, okay.
Are we asking for more money?
Yes.
Yes.
And what is your request?
It'd be for $500,000 a year.
100,000.
It front-loaded off the money
And then
that's.
it all comes out of the 50-year agreement, or
The settlement agreement.
500,000 settlement agreement number. But the settlement agreement now is going to cover, instead of 50, 70 years. So since they we're able to pay $1 million a year, I think that the money shouldn't be deducted from the total, and I think we should ask for $1 million.
I would say $1 million.
But you see, if you can't get it deducted from the 50 million that was originally agreed to. Because if you're asking for more money than
Yes.
that, then that starts another agreement. That's a different deal.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. For right now, there's money that should be in the pot that we can ask for. And the 500,000 or more, we're not asking for a limit. We're asking for 500,000 or more,
and
reasonably.
point of order is the value of a dollar is nothing of what it used to be.
Well, I understand, but
So-
right now we have nothing.
Yeah. So ask for more.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, does everybody understand this? We got a motion for the letters written, and see what happens. We can always ask for more even afterwards. Okay?
And
Right here.
correct me if I'm wrong, the 11 million that we've already received is not going to be taken off
Correct.
the
Yeah,
50,
that-
right?
That was upfront money, separate from
Right.
any 50 million or 35 million. That 11,280,000 is a done deal and doesn't get
don't
subtracted
have-
from anything.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what we
hap-
want.
That's what we're
What
going for.
happened
We
is,
want-
Yeah,
what happened is that after the failure of the spillway, the city administrator at the time negotiated with DWR to release money that was not supposed to be released until the first payment was made. So we've received all of the $11,280,000, and it does not get subtracted from anything.
right.
So I think that's kind of good to keep in mind because
Well,
it's 11 million bucks.
the whole impetus of this request is based upon FERC's inaction.
Yeah.
If FERC
Correct,
had
yes.
acted, we'd be in a different spot, but FERC hasn't acted, and it doesn't sound like they're gonna be acting right away. So that's the intent of the letter. I mean, that's just trying to
So
get
with
it.
that being said, this committee has discussed many times about writing a letter, which we have not yet done.
It's right here.
This is the letter.
This is the letter.
This
Yep.
is the letter.
This is asking for money.
Okay.
And we're asking for
Yeah,
500,000.
500,000 or more.
And Sunny was questioning why not ask for $1 million?
Yeah,
And
I-
we're saying within the parameters of.
right.
We think, I mean, obviously, they're not giving us
Anything
front-loaded
at
money
all.
now, so we felt like, let's try to get a figure that they might have an appetite to actually fund.
Yeah. Okay, we got a motion. Right here, second.
To entertain the possibility of amending the motion, I'd like to see 800,000. I could live with 800.
Do you want to amend your motion to 800?
I'll amend my motion to 800.
Okay.
I second.
All right. Call the roll,
No,
please.
there's, the other part is that it won't be deducted from the amount that's
Well,
paid
it-
after
he
there's
just-
a settlement
It'd be the
agreement.
same request we had before for the 11 million, which Bob just explained. Yeah.
Oh, you said it, I thought the letter said it would be deducted.
Off the top. Yeah, it would be deducted
Right,
off the
off the
top.
top.
Would be deducted from
It
the
would be.
first or subsequent SBF disbursements once the first license is approved and implemented.
Right.
It'd be deducted.
It'd be in advance, because right now we're not receiving those funds until the license is agreed to. And since we don't know when the license is going to be agreed to, if we can start getting those dollars now in advance of those dollars to us that we know that we're going to be entitled to, that's the idea. Because we're out of funds now, so that's why the SBF is kind of at a pause.
Well, I don't think it should be deducted.
Yeah, but you're not going to get anything then.
Well, I may not. I've asked for things that people thought there was no possibility you're gonna get, and I've gotten them. But if I didn't ask, I wouldn't have gotten them.
Well, we're here at 18 years and we're not getting anything, so at least we try to
Well,
get
we got
something.
11 million, or
Right,
7.
right.
Yeah.
And that's the impetus to ask for
That was
more
under
right
the
now.
same pretense,
Yeah,
Sonny,
yeah.
which I agree with you.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I think it's fraud, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Okay, call the roll.
Kemp Fowler,
Yes.
Sonny Brandt,
No,
Dave Pittman,
Yes?
Tracy Johnstone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate the discussion. Our next item looks to me is requests or correspondence. Do we have any, Bob?
None.
None. SBF Chairman call for agenda items for the next meeting. Any committee members have an agenda item to consider?
Since I was late, again, apologize, what did we discuss on the trail issue? Did we?
He made a presentation, and he'll get back to us with more information for the next
Okay.
meeting, yeah.
Thank you.
None other questions or comments? Advisory committee members, you all give your reports?
Yep.
I'll call for adjournment of the meeting. Next regular quarterly meeting of the Supplemental Benefits Fund Steering Committee will be held Wednesday, January 23rd, 2025. 2025?
Wow.
At 2 p.m.